Welcome back, and today we are doing the second part of the review of the Kawasaki Vulcan 650. Now, the first part, perhaps unfairly, was all about, hello, nice car, was all about the 4 dislikes that I had about this bike, and you can see that video if you click on that tab thing at the top right of the screen. And today is the opposite. So what are the 4 real likes that I have for this bike? I thought we'd start very simply with price. So this bike, well, no bike is cheap, but this bike is a Kawasaki, so it comes from one of the big brands. It is a 650 engine, so it's not small, and I got this second hand. It had 800 miles on the clock, and I got it for $5.5 grand, which is a lot of money, but when you consider a Harley Davidson FDX or whatever it's called, that absolute monster with the Milwaukee V-twin, costs, I don't know, 15-20 grand. This is a really decent bike for not an enormous amount of money. New, it probably costs you 7 grand, and if I was doing it again, I'd probably have bought not necessarily new, but a slightly different variant, because as I've sort of mentioned in previous review, was that the mods are so expensive for this. I would have gone for a slightly different variant that had most of those mods already included, which would have meant that I wouldn't have had to worry about it in terms of paying out more, because I would have already done it. So price is my number one really good aspect about this bike. The second thing is the looks of the bike. It's a slightly unusual kind of bike because it's a small cruiser, only a 650 engine from Kawasaki, which obviously prides itself on the Ninja as being its main target audience based bike, and so a cruiser is slightly unusual. I mean, they did of course do the Vulcan 900, which is the big brother, which they no longer make, but that's, you know, this is the extension of the Vulcan series. It's a really good looking bike, and it's unusual. Not many other people have them, which, you know, is a real bonus, considering, you know, how many similar other looking sports bikes you get. A small cruiser is a bit different, especially in Britain, where in America I know that this bike has a sort of cult following, but in Britain that hasn't so much caught on, and so it's a really nice thing to have a bike that people ask you what it is, they ask you about it, they say, you know, how good it looks, and, you know, the colour variants you can go for aren't that exciting, but you can always wrap them and things. But yeah, so price number 1, looks number 2. 3, which I suppose is connected to price, is economy. So I'm a car driver, and I, on a 1.4 you know, very basic car, would be excited to get 50 miles per gallon. I mean, that's going, I don't know, a gentle 70 miles an hour on a motorway when it's flat. You know, you're not looking at getting much more than 50, 52 maybe, and if you wanted a bike, sorry, if you wanted a car that could do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, so then you're looking at some hot hatch, super hatch, so, well, actually just hot hatch really. So the Audi S3 would do 0 to 60 in the same time as this bike, and you would get maybe they say 42, but you can't exactly believe everything that comes in from the Volkswagen group in terms of miles per gallon. So let's take off at least 10%. You're not looking at anything better than high 30s, mid to high 30s, I'd have thought. And this gets 60, 62. You know, it's almost double the miles per gallon that you would get from a similar performing hot hatch in terms of 0 to 60. Obviously that's where the comparison finishes, because a bike is so much smaller, it's lighter, you can't carry 4 passengers, you know, it's a statistic for statistics' sake rather than being a true reflection. Which I suppose brings me on to the fourth good point. So we've looked at looks, we've looked at economy, we've looked at price, speed. Most people buy bikes because they're quite fast, they're exciting, they're a little bit loud. This bike isn't particularly loud, but we might look to fix that in the near future. But that's the sort of things you buy a bike for. You don't buy a bike to be sort of that sedate, really. Even a cruiser, you don't look to be that sedate. You want a little bit of punch or noise in it. Oh, that's a great pillar sticking out of it. So speed. This Kawasaki 650, as I mentioned, does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. I think it's either 4.6 or 4.2, but it's fast. It's so fast, in fact, that it comes in at number 15 in the top fastest cruisers in the world. So for 5.5 grand second hand, I mean, you can go cheaper, but say you're me, you spent 5.5 grand and you have got a great looking bike with a really good economy that's also the 15th, as it were, fastest cruiser in the world. And I think that's an astounding achievement by Kawasaki in terms of what they've been able to achieve from the engine and as a bike in general. So there you have it, a review of the good points of this bike. Looks, economy, price and power. What more could you want from a bike? Well, a comfier seat maybe. Anyhow, I will see you in another video, and I wish you a very good evening.